Her storm ended the moment I chose stillness.
Her birthday bash lit up a rooftop bar in the city. Fairy lights strung across the beams, a champagne tower gleaming against the skyline, guests polished and shining in their finest. Ariel, my wife, moved through the place like it was hers. Truth is, it was. She chose the spot, the colors, the music, even the type of roses flown in for the railings. I'm Miles Forrester, 40, a contractor. My life is about putting up walls, laying beams, making sure what I build doesn't crumble when pressure hits. For 9 years, I figured Ariel and I were laying down something just as steady. We came from different worlds. She knew summer homes, trips abroad, polished shoes. I knew job sites, thrift racks, and worn-out sneakers. Still, I never felt less until that night when she grabbed the mic. Her heels tapped as she climbed onto the small stage near the DJ's booth. In that red dress, she glowed, eyes bright with bubbles and attention. I thought she'd give the usual thank you speech, maybe toss out a cute memory like she loved to do. But instead, she cleared her throat, flashed me that sly grin she thought was charming, and leaned in. "I just want to say," she began, eyes drifting over the crowd, "I'm so blessed tonight. Not just because it's my birthday, not only because all you beautiful people showed up, but because, well," she paused, stretching the moment. "Let's be honest, I married down." Laughter broke out, rolling through the crowd. I froze, unsure if I'd heard right. She laughed with them, shoulders shaking like she'd landed the joke of her life. I waited for her to soften it, say she was kidding, but no, she pressed harder. Sometimes when you feel a little insecure, you choose a guy who makes you look brighter, someone who lets you be the star. The room roared. Her friends spilled their drinks. Her dad slapped the table like he was front row at a comedy club. Even Tyson, my best friend, the only one of mine who showed, looked at me with a mix of pity and shock. I smiled back, of course I did. Smiled like a husband who knew his role, like a man trained to swallow it down. I nodded, acting cool, while something inside me went silent. Not rage, not shame, just stillness. That was it, the split second when something in me, something I hadn't even noticed building, broke wide open. She hadn't been joking, not really. Words like that don't leave your mouth unless you already believe them. That wasn't banter. That was a slip, a quiet confession. She wrapped it up with a toast, glass lifted high, then tossed me a kiss like a stage trick. The room copied her, clapping, cheering, filming on their phones. Somebody yelled, "You're a queen, Ariel!" And she was majestic, untouchable, sharp as a crown with thorns. I felt like a prop, the faithful husband, the solid man who stands behind her shine. Maybe once I liked that. Maybe I was proud to be the guy who kept the roof tight, bills straight, the dog walked. But at some point, she stopped treating that as strength and started seeing me like a chair, useful but invisible. I drifted through the rest of the night like smoke. People slapped my back, talked at me, laughed like we were sharing the punchline. But we weren't. I wasn't in on the joke. I was the joke, the kind that stings after the laughter fades. Later, with the music pounding and the drink spilling, I slipped outside to the balcony. The city roared below, cars, neon, endless lives rolling forward. I held the rail, asking myself if maybe I'd blown her words up too big. But I knew better. It wasn't the line, it was the way she tossed it out so easy, soaking in the applause. That kind of ease isn't born from fiction, it grows from habit. At home, she carried on like nothing had happened. Shoes off by the door, humming some off-key pop song as she tugged out her earrings, raving about how perfect the night had been. "I think it was my best birthday yet," she said, smiling while pulling that lemon water she always bought from the fridge. I stood there, coat still on, keys in my hand, watching. She didn't notice. Or maybe she did and chose not to. At last, she turned, sipping from her glass. "You good? You're so quiet." I stared at her, letting the pause hang. Then I asked, voice flat, "What did you mean by that line?" She blinked, like I'd broken some daydream she was still in. "What line?" "You know which one." She rolled her eyes, brushing past me. "Oh, that. Come on. It was a joke. Everybody laughed. Don't be so touchy." There it was again. That word, sensitive. Ariel's favorite tag whenever she wanted to dodge blame. She used it the same way when I pointed out how she corrected me in front of people, or when she teased about my boots leaving dirt by the door after work. It was her trick, shrinking me without raising her voice, slicing with that light, mocking tone. I didn't laugh, I told her. She stilled, hands gripping the couch back. Then she turned slow. "Miles, you're actually mad? Really? Don't do this. "You know I love you." It was nothing, a throwaway line. People say silly things after too much champagne and too much attention. You're blowing it up. Maybe I was. Or maybe not. Because the way she brushed it off, casual, trained, almost rehearsed, made it clear this wasn't new. She'd stepped on me before to stand taller. This was only the first time I truly caught it. I didn't fight. Didn't answer. I walked past her down the hall into the workshop I'd built from the ground up, a room she avoided, claiming the sawdust and polish made her sick. But to me, that place was more than timber and tools. It was my corner of the world, my name, my hands. The hum of the bulb overhead cast its glow while I looked around at what I'd built. Papers stacked on the desk, plans rolled in the corner, a calendar covered in project notes. She had never asked once about any of it, never wanted to know what jobs I was chasing or how the crews were doing. To her, it was always just Miles and his handyman stuff. She didn't know I was finalizing a 7-figure deal downtown or that I'd bought another truck, opened a third office. She never cared to. To Ariel, I was simply the net, steady, quiet, waiting while she soaked in the spotlight. I looked at my hands, calloused, rough, strong. The same hands that had fixed every pipe in our house, assembled every piece of furniture she impulsively bought online, paid every bill, even the ones she didn't know we had. Hands that had been steady through every emotional storm, through every dismissive remark. And now those hands were done holding it all up. I started packing. I didn't move with rage. I wasn't shoving things into bags or throwing clothes across the room. No, I packed with the same precision I used to lay foundation beams and draft framing plans. I took my time, my tools, my documents, my personal files. All of it went into the truck, quietly, efficiently. She was upstairs for most of it, curling her hair, getting ready for some late-night hangout with her friends. Girls' night, she called it earlier, winking. The irony wasn't lost on me. At 9:12, she came downstairs in a backless dress, heels in hand, purse slung over her shoulder. She paused just long enough to blow me a kiss over her shoulder. "Love you, babe," she said. I didn't respond. She didn't notice. By 9:30, the truck was loaded. The contracts she'd never cared about were in the passenger seat. The workshop lights were off. The door was locked behind me. I didn't touch the bedroom. Left all my clothes hanging, shoes lined up. Let her wonder why I hadn't cleared them out. Let her think I might come back. I didn't leave a note, but I did schedule an email. 6:45 a.m. sharp. I typed it slowly, deliberately. No insults, no begging, just truth, quiet and clear. Subject line: "You married down, remember?" The body of the message wasn't long. It didn't need to be. "You stood in a room full of people and laughed at the man who built your world with his hands. I hope it was worth it." Below that, 3 attachments. The first was the PDF file of the divorce papers. Everything filled out. No drama, no mess. Just signatures needed. I'd had them drafted by a lawyer she didn't know I kept on retainer for business affairs. The second was a detailed accounting of the silent partnership I'd just dissolved. For 9 years, I'd funneled part of my business earnings into the joint account she had access to. Never questioned where the money came from. Trips, clothes, spa days. She'd always assumed I was just good with budgets. She didn't know I'd been the silent half-owner in a residential development company that paid quarterly dividends. A company she'd benefited from without ever asking how. Now that tie was cut, fully, legally. And the third attachment? A scan of the deed to the house under my name. Only mine. The house she lived in, the one she decorated and called ours in Instagram captions. I had bought it before the wedding, paid it off by our 4th anniversary. But I never added her name. Not out of suspicion, but because she said once over wine, "I don't need to own anything, I just like pretty things." That should have been a clue. And then I drove off, not in anger, not in heartbreak, but in stillness. Because when someone tells you who they are, even through a joke, you listen. And I'd finally heard her. By the time she stumbled back through the front door, it was just past 6:30 a.m., the sky outside still carrying the early hue of morning. She was probably half drunk, heels in one hand, phone in the other, expecting to crawl into bed and demand breakfast by noon. But she didn't find me waiting. No boots by the door, no coffee brewing, no hum of the workshop tools she always said were so loud for no reason. No Miles. Her first call came at 7:02 a.m. A buzzing vibration on the business line I kept in my glove compartment. I didn't even look at it. Just stared ahead, parked in front of the lake house I'd secured a few months ago. At the time, I told myself I needed a quiet place to work, a getaway. Now I realized deep down I was already preparing for an escape. The second call came a minute later, then a third, a fourth. Then came the text. Where are you? At 7:06 a.m., my scheduled email hit her inbox. Carmen, our next-door neighbor, called me later. I didn't ask how she got the number. Her voice was half laughing, half horrified. Miles, what did you do? I think you broke her. She screamed? I asked. Loud. Like someone died. I thought she found a rat or something. But nope, just your email. Good, I said, then hung up. What Ariel never knew was that I co-owned 3 contracting companies across the state. Not one, not a side hustle. 3. One for luxury residential builds, one for commercial interiors, and one, my quiet favorite, for revitalizing old warehouses into creative loft spaces. I'd helped design and oversee half the high-rises downtown. My crews wore uniforms with my logo embroidered on the chest. My name was on contracts, signed in rooms she'd never even stepped foot in. And I never told her. Not because I was hiding, but because I didn't feel the need to flaunt it. She saw restraint as inferiority. I saw it as security. I didn't need applause to know my worth. But that was the mistake, wasn't it? Giving someone the benefit of the doubt while they built a narrative around you. She'd been saying, "You're lucky I chose you," for years. Sometimes with a giggle, sometimes with a mock sigh, sometimes after too much wine when the honesty slipped out between slurred syllables. At parties, she'd introduce me as her handyman husband who works with his hands, like I was describing a golden retriever who knew how to fetch. Never once did she say, "He owns 3 firms." Never once did she mention the late nights I spent drawing up blueprints, negotiating contracts, or managing payroll. She tried everything after I left. First guilt, "I gave you a better life." Then control, "You embarrassed me." Then rage, "Do you have any idea how this makes me look?" There it was. Her real concern wasn't how it felt, but how it appeared. Her panic wasn't about love. It was about image. Someone had filmed her birthday speech. It leaked online with the title, "Birthday Girl Destroys Her Own Marriage in 10 Seconds. It spread quickly in our town, in our circle, in the boutique fitness class she posted about twice a week. The comments weren't kind. People saw it for what it was. Not banter, not wit, but cruelty dressed up and broadcast. Her closest circle began to fade. Not with announcements, just distance. Slower responses, missed calls, brunches that had to be rescheduled. Because when you burn the person who is holding you steady, people start wondering if they're standing too close to the flame. She reached out desperately. "Can we talk?" We met at a simple cafe downtown, far from her usual orbit of rooftop lounges and curated brunch spots. She arrived 10 minutes late, wrapped in an oversized coat, no makeup on, hair tied back in a messy bun. For a second, I almost didn't recognize her. "I didn't mean it," she said softly. "That joke. It came out wrong. I was nervous. I was drinking. People expect me to be funny, and I thought it would land differently." "No, you meant it," I replied. "You just didn't expect me to hear it." Her face twitched. "Miles, you've always known how I talk. I joke around. That's what we do." "No, that's what you do. I sit through it. I've been sitting through it for 9 years." She stared at me with hollow stillness, like she was calculating whether any of this could still be salvaged. "I didn't think you'd leave," she admitted, her voice cracking. "I thought you loved me." "I did," I said plainly. "That's why I stayed, after all the other times. Now I love myself more." That was it. She knew then. Whatever part of me she thought still lived in that house was gone. She reached for my hand, slow and hesitant, but I pulled mine back. She flinched like she'd been struck. "I made a mistake." "No," I said calmly. "You told the truth. You just thought the truth wouldn't cost you anything." We sat in silence after that, not awkward, not tense, just finished. I stood up, nodded once, and walked toward the door. I didn't turn around. The weight had lifted. The script was over, and I was no longer playing a role in her show. The aftermath wasn't what I expected. I thought leaving would be the hardest part, but it wasn't. The hardest part was realizing how much I'd been diminishing myself to keep peace in a relationship that was never peaceful for me. Tyson called a few days later. "She's losing it," he said. "Trying to figure out where you went, asking everybody. Her dad's pissed. Her friends think you're having a midlife crisis." I laughed genuinely for the first time in weeks. "Tell them I'm having a clarity crisis instead." "You good, though?" he asked. I looked around the lake house. Bare walls, wood floors, soft breeze drifting in from the water. I'm better than good. The messages kept coming from her friends, her family, people who'd watched me smile through years of subtle degradation. "You just walked out without a word? That's cruel," one of her friends texted. Another said, "You embarrassed her." Her mother called with that same icy tone she'd used for years. "You've always been emotionally distant, Miles." I didn't answer any of them. They weren't reaching out for truth. They were reaching out for a version of events they could make sense of. One where Ariel was the sufferer, and I was the villain who abandoned the perfect life she'd built with such love. But I wasn't playing that game. That was her arena. Public perception, curated drama, emotional manipulation, cloaked in phrases like, "You know how I am." Meanwhile, the video of her speech kept spreading. Not viral by internet standards, but viral enough in our circle. The comments weren't kind. Hard to misunderstand someone saying they married down while smiling. When she tried to post about it being misunderstood, only one person commented, and it wasn't supportive. Her lifestyle started crumbling fast. The joint account was closed, the automatic payments bouncing. She'd never looked too closely at where the money came from, just trusted that the balance would refill itself like magic. But the magician was gone now, and the act was over. I found out through Carmen that Ariel used to mock me at work events too. "Salt of the earth," she'd say with wine in hand. "Very loyal. Just don't ask him about modern art or fine dining." That's how she kept herself elevated, by shrinking me. She didn't realize the foundation she was standing on was me all along. The business kept me grounded. I took on new projects, hired 2 team leads, spent more time on job sites. One of the younger guys, Marcus, saw the video and said, "Boss, that was cold. You didn't deserve that. You handled it like a king." That was the thing. I didn't need to react. The calm wasn't passive. It was intentional. I'd already decided long before that night that I was done. She tried one last meeting request. Not heartfelt, just cold. "Let's talk. I deserve that much." We met at that simple cafe again. This time she looked even more lost. No makeup, hair in a messy bun. "I don't know how to fix it," she whispered, tears in her eyes. "You're not supposed to," I replied. "You're supposed to live with it, just like I lived with all the things you thought were harmless." She wiped her eyes with her sleeve. "You'll regret this." "No, Ariel, I'll remember this. That's different." We sat in silence after that. When I stood to leave, I didn't look back. The weight had lifted completely. Outside, the breeze hit my face, crisp and clean. Closure doesn't always come with forgiveness. Sometimes it comes with clarity. Now I live in a quiet cottage by the lake. No marble countertops, no decorative pillows bought for aesthetic but never used. Just clean wood floors, honest air, and space that breathes with me. It's not empty, it's peaceful. There's no performance here, no stage lighting, just me and the life I rebuilt. My business is thriving in ways I never imagined. Funny how that works. When the noise dies down, you start to see things clearly. I poured everything into my companies. More focus, more leadership, more energy. Projects finished faster. Clients noticed the change. Word spread about my work ethic, my attention to detail, my reliability. I wasn't dragging around emotional dead weight anymore, and the freedom showed in everything I touched. I wake up at 4:45 a.m., not because I have to, but because I want to. I walk to the dock with my coffee and watch the sun rise over water that reflects only what's real. No filters, no curation, no performance, just morning light on honest water. Sometimes I get messages from people who saw the video, strangers who somehow got my number. "You handled that with grace. You're an example of strength." That silence? Masterclass? I never reply. I don't need applause for walking away. But the messages come anyway from people who recognize something in my restraint that they'd been looking for in their own lives. But it wasn't grace. It was clarity. Because there's something about being laughed at by the person who's supposed to love you that strips away every illusion. That moment didn't just change my marriage. It changed me. It reminded me that being steady is a gift, but letting people mistake it for weakness is a choice. And I'd chosen wrong for too long. There are still moments when memories creep in. Not the big ones, the wedding, the trips, the parties. Those are all noise. I remember the quiet ones that used to feel safe. Her head on my shoulder during storms, Sunday mornings before the world woke up, the way she used to hum under her breath when she was cooking. Before the pride, before the image, before she needed an audience for everything. But even those memories don't hurt anymore. They just remind me I was capable of love. And now I'm capable of it for myself. I pass people sometimes who look at me with that "I heard what happened" expression. Some offer nods, some avoid eye contact. Some ask how I'm doing with that too careful tone, like they're unsure if I'm whole again. I always smile because I'm not whole again. I'm whole for the first time. You see, I spent years being the man behind the scenes, quiet, reliable, steady. And for a while, I thought that was enough. That being the calm in someone else's storm meant you had value. But storms don't love calm. They consume it. And Ariel was a storm who never learned how to respect stillness. I used to think the worst thing someone could do was cheat on you, lie to you, betray you in some dramatic fashion. But I've learned the worst thing someone can do is make you feel small, bit by bit, word by word, laugh by laugh, until one day you stop recognizing your own strength. The silence I'd maintained for years wasn't weakness, it was restraint. And when that restraint finally ran out, it wasn't with explosion or drama. It was with precision, surgical, clean, honest. Not anymore. Now I write my own story. No stage, no spotlight, no punchline. Just a man who stopped asking to be seen and decided to stand in the light he built himself. And you know what? It's enough.